Hi, everyone. We're so excited for this panel. We have some incredible speakers lined up. We will have about 45 minutes of prepared questions for the panelists, and then we'll open up to the audience for Q&A. And if you notice, there's a spot on the Engagely platform for each of you to enter in your questions, and then the audience can upvote ones that they're interested in hearing more. And so with that, I will introduce our moderator, Carol. Carol is a second-year full-time MBA and our former fearless net impact leader. In addition to her MBA, Carol is receiving the Leaders in Sustainability certificate from the UCLA Institute of Environment and Sustainability. And last summer, Carol was an ESG intern at a PE firm and has interest in social entrepreneurship. So with that, Carol, I will kick it off to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Maddie. And thanks everyone for joining. I know that 80s, our admissions weekend just wrapped up. So I believe there's a lot of admitted students who are interested in learning how to get involved with net impact and the impact opportunities that we have here at Anderson. Also, if you're somewhere in the application process or thinking about applying, then this is a great way to understand how purpose and profit intersect in the MBA space. So looking forward to addressing any questions that you all might have. And let's jump right in. Thank you so much to all of our panelists who have joined today. We have great panelists from across our different Anderson programs. I will kick it off to Stephen to start with the introductions.
Morning, everybody. So glad to be here. My name's Stephen. I'm a Mbas 2022, so a second year. This year is my boss, Aurora. She's going to be one year old on May 1st. She'll be popping in and out on the call. So I'm an independent consultant for small medical clinics, and I came to Anderson to explore my career options and take a little bit more direct control of the driver's seat of my career. I'm specializing in social impact and have been involved with the Net Impact Consulting Challenge, and I'm currently doing the Social Impact Consulting Core. So glad to be here today. Thanks so much.
Hi, everyone. My name is Divya. I am a JD MBA student graduating this year. So I'm a second year at Anderson and then a 4L at the law school. I come from a background in environmental conservation, starting with scientific research, moving to field conservation, working on orangutan conservation in Indonesia. And then I came back to the United States and worked at traditional big green nonprofits like Earth Justice and the Nature Conservancy. At the law school, I have worked on a number of different projects still in the environmental realm. I've gone to DC to lobby for federal plastics legislation, which is still live, and that's very exciting. I've also worked on cutting edge climate litigation, a lot of the intersection of human rights in environmental issues. And at Anderson, I am a part of the Anderson Venture Impact Partners, which is our impact investing fund, and then also part of Net Impact. Oh, and after graduation, I'll be going into renewable energy project finance at a big law firm in Los Angeles.
Hi, I'm Justin Sternberg. I'm a TV writer here actually in Los Angeles. And it was during our last writer's strike that I kind of felt a little bit lost and unsure what to do. And a friend actually recommended that I go and meet CEOs of 3 different nonprofits. And they basically made it very clear to me that I was going to be they're actually going to be helping me more than I was going to be helping them. And it was the truth. I went there truly to help them create their story and make it more meaningful and powerful. But at the end of it all, I was the one that was thankful. And when I came to Anderson, I immediately got connected with Nick and the Consulting Challenge. And I realized that this was the most powerful thing possible, was a way to connect my storytelling ability and the business aspect I was learning and bringing it back to helping nonprofits. So I'm incredibly excited to be here, discuss any questions everyone might have.
Oh, thanks, Justin. My name is Mei-Ling Rosen. My pronouns are she and her. I am an alum from the full-time program. I graduated in 2019. I started my career in education, very much equity first, ended up moving to Vietnam, which is my mother's country of origin, and getting very involved in the ed tech and social entrepreneurship scene there. Realized very quickly that a lot of the people who were making the most consequential decisions in that space had either the MBA or a similar skill set. And so I knew I wanted to pursue an MBA and knew I wanted to be at a program that had a social entrepreneurship program and bent. And so that's what brought me to Anderson. And since graduating, I have been working at Platypus Advisors, which is a boutique social innovation consultancy. So our clients have included small social enterprises, nonprofits, as well as, the chief social impact officer at a large publicly traded tech company. So just have been really excited to be able to apply those skills. And I'm excited to hear all of your questions and kind of share back.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone, again. As you can see, we have a really diverse set of interests when it comes to impact, and impact can mean a lot of different things for different people, and there's a lot of ways that you can apply it to your career. And so I would love to hear from you all the different ways that you've been able to take advantage of the impact initiatives throughout your time at Anderson. Justin, you had mentioned NIC, so would love to start there. If you could tell everyone what NIC is and what you kind of got out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think like a lot of things in life, I didn't seek it out really, but in the end, it changed me in ways I never could have expected. NIC was a nonprofit group, at least the consulting challenge, where different nonprofits throughout LA, and I think even possibly even broader than LA, come and they bring in different MBA students to kind of crack a challenge that they have. And it was really specific that they had a storytelling challenge. And so I got brought in by a bunch of fellow classmates in the executive MBA program. And we sat down and I quickly realized, again, like my path has happened before, I was there to help them, but in the end, they were helping me much more than I was ever going to possibly help them. And so we worked together. It was this intensive, I think my first year was like 2-week challenge or 2.5-week challenge, where we were meeting till 1 a.m. most nights, besides our regular day job, as well as our family and as well as our schoolwork. But it was probably the most powerful experience I had at Anderson because it was so early on. For me, it was like our first month or so at Anderson. I didn't know a lot of people. And suddenly it was like this boot camp where I was working together with all these different classmates, and we were coming together with different voices, different opinions to really help change an organization for the better. And I think I left that realizing how powerful storytelling is, how important it is, but even more so how much I love giving back. And I think that's one of the best parts about Anderson is you have these opportunities to not only help your own career and your own self, but obviously give back in ways that the outside larger community needs help with, and it's beneficial to everybody.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Stephen, I believe you've also participated in SIC, which is similar to the Net Impact Consulting Challenge, but takes place over the course of a quarter. Can you talk a little bit more about that experience for you?
Yeah, sure. I didn't do SIC my first year, but I'm currently doing it right now in this spring quarter. And so Social Impact Consulting Core is similar to NIC in that the Anderson sources nonprofits and social enterprises as clients for student groups. And you can sign up either as an individual or a collective or partially formed team. And you're matched with these organizations that are part of your interests in industry and then also the types of projects you want to do. And it's really great. You meet with the client on a regular basis. It's essentially a consulting engagement. Like these are, real things that you're working on that are adding value to these organizations and their beneficiaries. It's really, really great. We get great advice. I think there's 3 panelists throughout the week, a former CEO of Deloitte, a president of a nonprofit consulting firm, are delivering this, really candid face-to-face personal advice to help you along the way. So it's really valuable experiential learning experience.
And we actually have one more nonprofit consulting engagement called Board Fellows. Mei-Ling, I know you participated in that. What was that experience like for you?
Board Fellows was, again, similar. We had a nonprofit consulting engagement. It was for academic credit over the course of a quarter. The project I got to work on was somebody who had actually initially participated as a client in the Net Impact case competition and then had a longer project. And so sports-based youth development, I always stumble through that sports-based youth development nonprofit based in Southern California, which was a great opportunity for me to combine, like I was a college athlete, so combine my previous passions with the MBA skill set. And it really did, as Stephen and Justin have said, help prepare for, my post-MBA career of client work and consulting.
Yeah, that's awesome. And there's also opportunities to get involved beyond nonprofit consulting. Mailing, just to continue with you, you were also the Social Impact Act coach during your time here. And so can you talk a little bit about the advice that you have to share with someone who wants to start a career in social impact?
Sure, happy to. So for those who haven't heard the acronym before, ACT is Anderson Career Teams. So it's the kind of mentoring, peer coaching for each career path. Social impact obviously isn't just one career path. It can mean so many things. So that was very different than maybe a consulting or a finance track. So to answer this question, I would say number one is like a mindset piece of just approaching everything with the humble beginner mindset, knowing you're going to have to collaborate, knowing there's not going to be one savior, and knowing that there's just a lot to learn and a lot of work to be done, and it's not going to happen overnight. And then two is part of that beginner mindset is asking advice. So I knew this question was coming and actually asked some of the partners I work with their advice from their much longer than my careers in social impact. And the three things that they all said were, number one, bring some skill set and knowledge to the work, find out what is the unique knowledge that's needed in that work, and do that. And so I think deciding whether or not to pursue an MBA might be part of that. For me, it was. Two is networking authentically. So, before the MBA was like networking it was an appalling concept for me. I was really stressed out about it. But I think if you network authentically and pursue, whether it's conferences that are interesting to you, talks that are interesting to you, other community events, and make authentic connections with people who share those passions, those will turn into opportunities. And that's actually how I ended up at Platypus Advisors in the first place. And then the most important one is just, regardless of MBA or other career path, is just start wherever you are. You can start infusing impact into whatever role you have, whether it's part of your title or not. And so those are kind of the three things that they wanted to share, and that I would +1 +1,000 emphasize.
I totally hear you on the networking piece. I was horrified about the prospect of networking before I came to Anderson. So it's definitely helped with that. One of the other career-focused activities that we lead through Net Impact and through AVIP are days on the job. Divya, can you talk about some of the DOJs or days on the job that you have led or participated in, and also share a little bit more about what AVIP is?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll start with the AVIP question first. AVIP, again, is the Anderson Venture Impact Partners, which is UCLA Anderson's impact investing fund. As a first year or second year FEMBA, you would be a director and you go through the entire impact investing cycle. So you go into the community, look for different deals that you can source, different companies, you move into due diligence and really vet those companies. And then you finish up the whole process by creating an investment memo and presenting that in both an internal competition round in front of many of the top VCs, impact VCs in LA, but also in front of the investment committee. And then one deal is chosen for $50,000 investment. As a second year, you'd be a VP managing the entire process and then also tracking the portfolio. I do want to say that AVIP has been really successful this past year. We actually won the inter-business school competition mint and came out on top against all of the other business schools. So big ups to the education vertical for securing $50,000 more into this really amazing social startup. And then in terms of days on the job, AVIP and Net Impact do collaborate to go to different impact VCs in the Los Angeles area. A couple that we have done in the past 2 years have been Core Innovation Capital, Lacey, which is the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, Align Impact, and we also go to a number of emerging startups. So one that I really loved was going to Tala, which is a fintech startup.
Super cool. I didn't realize you had one. Congrats. That's really exciting. Cool. So shifting gears a little bit, outside of the extracurriculars that we can get involved with, what have been some of your favorite social impact courses while at Anderson? Divya, I'm going to go back to you to kick that off.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say social entrepreneurship with Professor Gail Northrup has been like the keystone course, my favorite course of all time, my favorite professor at Anderson. This course was incredible, both in helping me personally kind of get past my skepticism about using for-profit models to create social impact and change, and then also deconstructing the nonprofit industrial complex and kind of really analyzing why we have certain assumptions, whether we should have those assumptions, and how to break nonprofits kind of out of the cycle that they're in, which hasn't been useful in fighting against all these huge systemic issues. And the other part that I really loved about this class was that it was experiential. So we all had different projects that we were carrying through the entire course. You did a lot of interviews and you came up with different solutions. So it was really great to both learn about all these different theories and concepts and then apply them directly at the same time.
Agree. I loved that class. Anyone else have any classes that they want to highlight?
I'll just jump in and plus one, the experiential. I took a behavioral decision-making class my last quarter with Dean Caruso, who is also our Dean for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, which was a role I held on our student government. So being able to work with her in that class, and our project was building out the pipeline of diverse applicants to Anderson and how we could use behavioral decision-making to make the application process a little bit more nurturing and encouraging to folks from backgrounds that aren't traditionally represented in business school. So again, whether or not the class is explicitly in the social impact coursework, there's opportunity to embed that.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop in with some of my favorite classes, seconding a lot of what's going on here. But I took Dean Caruso's Leading for Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion class, which is a new addition to the curriculum last spring quarter. Really fantastic experiential learning process where there's introspective and also outreach type engagements that are required, in addition to learning about the space and spheres generally with leading cutting edge behavioral science. Really, really great capstone project for the course as well. I also took recently Professor Walski's Impact Creation, Evaluation, and Analysis class. Capstone project for that is interviewing an impact leader and really getting into their brain about how their organization is thinking about impact, and also chock full of fantastic guest speakers from amazing impact organizations that are so generous with their time and their information and knowledge, which has been definitely a common theme but throughout a lot of the impact classes that I've taken.
Amazing. And besides those specific courses that kind of focus on impact, picking up on something that Mei Ling had said, is how did impact come up in these other classes that it wasn't kind of explicitly part of the curriculum? And has your definition of impact changed at all throughout your time at Anderson because of these interactions and experiences? Anyone can start if you have thoughts on those.
I can kick it off. So one of the things for me that I've seen is that, Anderson is a very student-led environment, and, for the impact community is really strong here. And I've made a lot of great connections and been totally inspired and humbled by a lot of the colleagues in the space. I will say too, that impact's not on the radar for a lot of people and folks. And it is weaved into some of the curriculum. And one of the great things about the student-led environment is that it gives you the opportunity to, or me the opportunity to go into these spaces and really be advocating for impact where I see it connecting to these issues and speaking up for that, much in a similar way to where if you're going to be pursuing impact in the more corporate world, you're going to need to be bringing other folks into it where it's not on the radar. So really like that, and found a lot of support from Anderson when I am pursuing that and advocating in those spaces.
I'm happy to jump in about like the student-led piece. I think, well, outside of classes, in the wake of the killings of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor, and during kind of the Black Lives Matter movement, everything last spring, we had a number of students that came together and started the anti-racism working groups. And these were informal student-led groups that followed a curriculum, and students would meet in groups of 5 to 6 on like a bi-weekly basis to talk about a number of different topics depending on like which section they were in. So I was in Dismantling White Supremacy, and I spoke with a number of students, many of whom I had not met or created a relationship before. And it was challenging at times, definitely, but I think it was so rewarding to have the space and to have, you know, over 100 Anderson students sign up, and we're in the second and third iterations of the original one now, and participate and kind of talk and think meaningfully about racial discrimination and the intersections with business, because, you know, racial discrimination and all these issues are only going to become more salient over time. So that's been one that I've been really impressed with and really glad to be a part of.
Yeah, for sure. And Mailing, I think you had mentioned that while you were here, there was also an open forum with the dean on kind of a similar topic.
Oh yeah, I think racism is, most of us know by now, not a new topic in this country. It didn't start this summer. Unfortunately. When we arrived to campus, within basically a week of being on campus, the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville on the campus of UVA happened. And, you know, a number of us, I think, our class didn't quite know each other yet. We were just getting to know each other. And then there was this event that was really traumatic for those of us who are from, you know, marginalized identities. And there was not an automatic space to talk about it. And so we made that space, and we went to administration, and, you know, they held that space for us. I think more than half of our class attended the open forum. It was just, there was really limited structure, but it was just really allowing my classmates to kind of express how those events impacted them in that moment. And I would say it really set the tone for how our class started to engage with and deal with those issues, issues of race, diversity, equity, inclusion, all of the above. And I would just encourage everybody here, like as Divya said, there are avenues for that, and there are existing programs, and we have a dean for diversity, equity, inclusion. But for those of you who are admitted students, you can bring that and you can initiate that. And I encourage you to do so, because, you know, the MBA, it's 2 years, 3 years if you're in the FEMBA program. And it's a limited amount of time, and it's really about what you and your class bring to it. So that's my encouragement to all of you, is if you want to see it, make it happen.
Totally. And I think that applies outside of your MBA too. So just highlighting what Stephen had said, it's really good practice to how to bring these topics to the forefront when you're in the work environment. And we're already seeing some questions come in. Not surprisingly, got a question about career opportunities. That's the biggest reason why people want to come to get their MBA. So Justin, I would love to start with you, because especially if you're thinking about impact, a lot of people have a question about, you know, nonprofit versus for-profit or in the corporate space. So you have some great perspective since you've done storytelling on both sides of things. So what are some of the challenges that you're seeing that nonprofits and foundations face, and how is that different or similar to your corporate clients?
Yeah, I mean, I'll take it twofold. I'll take first off, as far as the job opportunities, I'm going to echo a lot of what everyone else has said here, which is the beauty of Anderson, especially your MBA, and I can only talk specifically about the executive MBAs. You get what you put into it, but that's what leaders do. So if something happens like, COVID, you can either hide under a rock and say, why did this happen to me? I wish it didn't happen under my watch. Or you could say, I have no choice, but I have to figure this out. I have to make the best out of this. I have to find a solution, and I have to work as hard as I can with everybody around me to hear every voice, understand every opportunity, and solve a challenge. And so I think whatever it is, whatever passion you have, whatever career goal you have this amazing opportunity of these professors and these students and these cohorts to get something special out of it. I don't think it's handed to you on a silver platter in many ways. And so what can you do to bring whatever change you want, both personally and through the society at the end of this? And so we, as an executive MBA cohort, a lot of us wrote down before graduation or before our second year, what 5 things we wanted to have changed. What were we going to feel proud of upon graduation? Not just your degree, not just the 3 letters, but what did we want to accomplish our second year here? And I think that's something that we've all held each other accountable for. And we're really excited about when we get our diploma to know that we've conquered much more than just simply those 3 letters at the end of our name. As far as the differences between nonprofits and for-profits, I think the big challenge I see nonprofits is they don't have a lot of money to get their messaging out. So when we sit down and we talk storytelling, their knee-jerk reaction is fear usually. If we don't exist, the world won't be a better place. If you don't know what we're trying to do, the world will be worse. And I find through studies that you have a lot more success in talking a happier point of view. And so how can we frame this in a way which is because of us, we can solve. Together, we can conquer, right? And let's take that positive. And at first, I think a lot of times for nonprofits, they don't see it that way. It's almost, they have found success in the past with fear. And I've tried to turn it as we do in Hollywood, which is how can we leave you feeling something that you can go conquer the world because you've worked with us and because you've been on a path that we've helped create. So in short order, that's what I would say. Hope that helps.
Yeah, I mean, that's relevant, I think, for all types of clients. And as you're talking impact in the corporate space, especially what I've seen is consumers want to see that, want to see the impact and the message of hope and want to know that they're working to solve a problem by engaging with that company in some way. So yeah, that makes perfect sense. Thanks for that perspective. Maylin, can you talk, you are the only one who's experienced life fully post-Anderson. So can you talk a little bit about your recruiting, both for your summer internship and post-Anderson, and some of the opportunities and challenges that you face looking for a social impact role?
Sure, and I will try to borrow from Justin's lesson and frame it in the positive, but I won't sugarcoat it, and I will say that especially relative to some of the other more typical MBA career paths where it is a pretty clear cookie cutter track from application to recruiting to internship to whatever post MBA career path. In the social impact space, for better and for worse, that is really still doesn't exist yet, or didn't while I was a student. So for me, my internship recruiting was very just in time, last minute. I ended up going to a social enterprise called Wonder School. It was funded. At the time, Omidyar was the Omidyar network is a primary funder. It's an early childhood education marketplace. Their new head of marketing at the time was an Anderson alum and was like, you know what, we could get an MBA intern and they could do a lot for us. And so they put out an MBA internship and I applied and got it. And the 3 of us MBA interns were employees like 13, 14, and 15. So they didn't have a ton of resources at the time I joined. And I probably actually wouldn't have been able to afford to accept that fellowship or that internship, except that I was able to also secure a HASCamp fellowship, which is offered through Impact at Anderson to support students who are looking to pursue social impact internships and make sure that that is not a financial barrier. And so I was able to pursue that internship. It was an incredible experience over the summer, learned a lot. And then full-time recruiting, to be honest, it was very similar using my Anderson network. And so my co-coach for the ACT program had interned with my current boss over the school year. And when she accepted a full-time role, she was like, you should connect with Caroline. And I did, and we stayed in touch and did a couple of projects with her, and it ended up turning into the full-time role at Platypus. So it was very freeform, and as you know, Justin and everybody else has said, it's what you make of it. And so if that's the path you want to go, it will be a little bit unsettling compared to your classmates who are on a defined track, but the opportunities are there, and the support from Impacted Anderson too.
Yeah, totally. I think anyone who's in a just-in-time recruiting path can get a little bit nervous. So I feel that. Someone else had asked if LA is a hub for impact opportunities. And I can speak a little bit to that. I actually had an academic internship while I was here in my first year. I'm still here in LA, but that came up through an RBA conference. RBA is the Retail Business Association, and they had a panel about companies that were doing good. And one of the speakers was the chief impact officer from a startup in LA called Gifts for Good. And I followed up with her for a coffee chat because I really liked what she had to say on the panel. And she had mentioned that there were a few things that she had wanted to get to, but just really didn't have the time. So I proposed that I work with her on an academic internship to help on some of those projects as it related to the sustainability of their packaging and their shipping and fulfillment processes, and was able to use that time to propose basically a new set of tools and processes that could help reduce their environmental footprint. And that only happened because I was based here in LA, and because we are so well connected to the LA community. And there's a lot of emerging startups here, and I think it's really hard to be a startup without having some kind of mission-oriented goal in mind in today's age. So if anyone has been here for longer than I have, I just moved here from the East Coast, but if anyone's a little bit more better integrated with the LA landscape, can speak to, what opportunities there are here and what that's like compared to the rest of the country. Anyone have any thoughts on that?
So I'm not actually in Los Angeles. I'm actually based out of the Bay Area, but I will say that through Net Impact Consulting Challenge and through Social Impact Consulting Core, they're connecting, most of the organizations are LA or Southern California based. And so being able to connect and tap into those, I know that Board Fellows also is based out of the Los Angeles area. And so the opportunities that are sourced by Anderson. And so that is a little bit helpful, I think, in a space where it can be ambiguous or not have a clear and defined path, that Anderson does do some of the legwork to be, excuse me, got some electrical cords down there. It does provide, a direct assistance that's really valuable to connect you to those organizations. And I'll say too, the professors are really well connected too. And so getting into office hours with them, they have great and fantastic networks, and they're very generous in terms of, providing direction and informational interviews to be really valuable for navigating that space.
I'll just add quickly, one of the passions that I came to Anderson to pursue was ethical and sustainable fashion. And so being in LA, which is a city, and being in Southern California more broadly, there's not just one particular industry, whereas I think in no shade to any other schools, wonderful, so many peers I admire, but a lot of other cities have maybe one or two dominant industries. In the Bay Area, you're going to see tech. In New York, you're going to see finance. And LA is a huge world-class city, but it still has so many other industries. So if your interests maybe sit outside of tech or finance, it's a great place to be.
Totally. Divya, question for you, because I know I've gotten a lot of questions from prospective students who are interested in dual degree programs. You are doing a JD MBA. How does the MBA work supplement your JD program? And is the MBA perspective on impact or renewables or the environment or kind of anything within those umbrellas, is that ever different or at odds with what you see in your other program?
That's a great question. So structurally, I'll just say that dual degree programs at UCLA typically are not like overlapping. So you're not doing a ton of your coursework at another school at the same time that you're doing it at Anderson. You'll do like a year at the other school or 2 years at the other school, and then do your first full year in toto at Anderson, and then there might be some mixing in your final year. In terms of the different perspectives, I would say that, you know, Anderson is still a business school, and the prevailing beliefs in the business community are different from, you know, what people are talking about in the public health program in at the law school. So it is really interesting to see the differences and the dynamics. And I think when it comes to renewable energy in particular, you have maybe not necessarily like a perspective from the law, but the law is very shaped by industry, and the markets have been really shaped by industry and what they've advocated for at the federal level and within the different interconnects. But then on top of that, the reason that we're able to start pursuing deep decarbonization in the energy sector is because of the economics of renewable energy, right? So renewable energy is only working because it is economically outcompeting oil and gas, and we're innovating at a far more rapid pace. We're providing a lot more stability in times of climate change, as you have seen this past year in Texas. And those are all the factors that we don't really talk about in the law school. And it's been really useful to get kind of the business understanding and what does it take. The big issue with a lot of systemic problems and trying to attack it from the for-profit angle is you have these great ideas, but how do you scale them up to commercialization? So I can put together the policy bucket and come up with a bundle that will help be supportive from the government side, but I also need to have a good business model that's going to help scale rapidly, because what we need to solve these problems is scale. And that is really informed by like the business curriculum, I would say.
Yeah, I will say I took a food studies course and I was the only MBA student in that class. First of all, you know, if you do have an opportunity to come to Anderson, the Anderson courses are amazing, but UCLA as a whole has really incredible graduate courses, and you can apply some of those towards your MBA degree. So highly recommend taking some classes outside of just Anderson. And in that food studies course, the professor, you know, kept bringing up, I'm glad that there's an MBA student here. You know, we really need to be working cross-disciplinary when it comes to these issues of the environment or social justice and equity. And so, you know, people are really craving, like change makers are really craving for MBAs to be getting involved. And so it's good to kind of have that MBA credentialing and be going into the impact spaces at this moment in time. I think there's huge demand for it. Cool. So we're getting a lot of questions in on Slido. So I'm going to shift gears and open it up to anyone to jump in on these. The most upvoted question is about so the question is, what are the top 3 activities, according to your experience, that an MBA student should do to increase their learning and become an expert in their chosen path? So we've touched on this a little bit, but maybe we can talk about, I actually really like this question because when I first started, I was kind of trying to figure out what does impact mean to me. And I got some advice from someone to narrow it down, not only in terms of the impact area that I'm most interested in, but also the field that I want to focus on, the field or industry or sector that I wanted to focus on, and really become an expert on that sector. So did anyone else get any advice similar to that, or have any recommendations on activities on how to become an expert in the path that you're taking?
I'll jump in really fast because I think one quick piece of advice I got early on, which I thought was really interesting, was if there's something that you want to become an expert in, reach out to the experts that you emulate and that you want to meet and bring them in as guest lecturers. Especially when COVID happened and over Zoom, you could get anybody. So who did you want to meet? Say I'm an Anderson MBA student. Say we would love your time, even if it's a half an hour, come talk. And it's a great way for you to build that network, build that relationship, and build that trust with that individual. But also that person wants to go teach and give back as well. And so it's a win-win for all. So I think specifically find out what you want, find the people you want to meet, reach out, bring them in. I think that's a great way to kind of learn and expand your network.
I think one of the things is going back to like the experiential learning piece is there are so many different, aside from the student groups, there's so many different opportunities to hone your skills in a specific area. So we have a consulting group that operates similar to AVEP, our Impact Investing Fund. And then we have SIF, which is an investment management experiential opportunity. And even though the consulting one and the investment management one aren't explicitly social impact oriented like AVEP is, by having more impact oriented students in those places, you're going to be able to, again, lead as a student and shift kind of where they're heading, and also tailor your skills a little bit more specifically in both that skill set and then also in the substantive area that you're interested in.
I think one of the things that I would say that some other folks have touched on, there's some overlap, is the idea of seeking out and finding authenticity with regards to what Justin was saying about kind of finding leaders that you emulate and sort of wanting to know how they got there, but also how you can be like that. I think also that in the impact space, the introspection throughout the MBA program is valuable because it helps you understand the why of what you're doing. And so kind of if you have that why, moving into these spaces, that a lot of the problems are really, really large, and it can be a real grind. And so having and connecting with the purposeful path that you're following is really important. And I've seen that in several other classes about the importance of kind of showing up with your passion and connecting that to what you're doing. And so that introspective process, I think, is a really key part of at least my MBA path. And it's driven me really intentionally towards rewarding and opportunities.
I think that's so true. I know that when you're recruiting in maybe a more traditional function or path, people are really looking for professional experiences that align to that particular job description. But when it comes to a job or a company that is more impact oriented, it is totally fair to bring in your own personal passions, experiences outside of the workplace that have driven you to connect to that particular subject. Because everyone who's working on climate change, in education, with nonprofits for whatever reason, or for profits that are mission driven in whatever capacity, they're bringing their own personal experiences to it. And I think in a lot of ways expect to see that personal passion and introspection to connect, because it's hard work and you need to have that personal connection to it. We have a couple questions that are, I think, related. So the first one here is about accountability. How do you hold people or organizations, whether it's in the professional world or at UCLA, accountable for their actions that might be counterproductive to social impact? And how have your experiences at UCLA aided that? I know we've talked a little bit about the student-led environment and the anti-racism working groups, but if you have any other examples to talk about accountability. The viewers would love to hear that. And then I think related to that is about pursuing traditional career paths and advocating for social and environmental practices in the workspace in a more traditional role or a more traditional company. So can you talk about driving change and holding people accountable in those types of spaces?
This is a very challenging question, and I'm happy to jump in on it, especially around accountability. So my advice for making change, either on holding accountability, or if you're in a traditional MBA, post-MBA job, but you still want to infuse the social and environmental responsibility, organize. The short answer is organize, and as school, organize with your classmates. And so that's number one. And seeing, even in the tech sector, we see now Google's employees unionizing for the first time. Organize, have a collective voice. I think that's so important no matter what change you want to do. And then two is being able to communicate to the powers that be, whether it's administration or the executive staff at a company or the decision makers, whoever that is, being able to communicate to them in terms of how it's going to impact the things that they care about, how it's, and then also leaving them room and having that optimism that if presented with the case that they will want to collaborate and work with you. And I think the example from my experience at Anderson is, Dean Judy Olian, who was dean at the time I came into Anderson, was such a powerful advocate for women and really changed how, like, the number of women being admitted to Anderson. But in my class, we only had 6 Black students. And that was in a class of 360 in the full-time program. So that was, when I arrived to campus, appalling, because I was expecting to come to a diverse environment. And for many of my classmates, especially my 6 Black classmates, that was incredibly stressful. And by organizing and by having our group come together and speak on behalf of a number of students, we were able to really highlight to her that this is, administration needs to do something to address this. And I think we were able to have a much more productive conversation with Dean Olian around that issue, because we were organized and because we kind of assumed a certain amount of positive intent that they would meet some of our demands or start to make progress. And that experience of having to kind of speak about an uncomfortable situation to somebody with a lot more power than me, but doing it alongside my peers, is something that I've continued to need to use and apply after business school. So that's my advice on that.
I'm happy to jump in as well. So obviously, like, when you're coming to get an MBA, you're typically looking to transition your career or kind of leapfrog forward. And I think sometimes in that cycle and in the environment where everyone is looking for a job at a name brand company, it's really easy to drink the Kool-Aid of those companies and to not continue to constructively be critical of them. So people are so hell-bent on becoming a PM at Amazon that they're willing to overlook numerous labor rights violations, all of the environmental injustice issues. And I think that the people who are most successful in taking a traditional post-MBA role at these large corporations are the ones who can identify all of the problems that they have with that company in advance of going, and go in with like a game plan of, how am I going to be really strategic about fixing this? And I can think of one of my friends who's a student at Anderson who's doing that exact thing and going to Walmart and is super considerate and critical of a lot of the issues that Walmart has in terms of social impact. And I feel better knowing that he's going to Walmart about Walmart. So I think have some sort of critical lens that you're able to view these companies, and not just what's the salary. oh, what are the benefits? Like, how is this going to help me? Like, think about it more holistically when you're looking for a job, and having conversations with your friends who are also looking for jobs at these companies. Bring it up, because sometimes it's something that they don't think about when they're in the recruiting process.
Actually, Divya, piggybacking off of that, someone has asked, how has UCLA changed your perspective of corporate success? And I think for me, it's looking for those key indicators that they are willing to listen and be influenced by their employees. I've seen in my summer internship, I saw just how big of an impact that senior leadership support for, in my case, ESG, environmental social governance, how quickly that helped push some of our recommendations and initiatives forward within the company. So having that top-down senior leadership support was hugely instrumental, and you can pick that up very quickly, I think, in your interview processes and even in the some of the media about that company. If the leaders in that company are actively speaking about it, actively posting about it on their LinkedIn. And at the same time, I think in your interview process, it's been pretty easy for me to identify, oh, actually a lot of this public statement is just that, and it doesn't impact anyone's day-to-day roles, and these kind of mission statements maybe aren't being taken seriously. So that's been eye-opening for me in defining at least my own definition of success and the type of job that I want to take. Does anyone have any perspective shift about corporate success since they've been here?
I think I can hop in a little bit. One of the discussions that's been commonly surfacing through several different classes, impact and not, is the idea of shareholder value and stakeholder value. And I think that perspectives are shifting. There's a lot of opportunity that's there. And I think even from an economic and strategic perspective, organizations and firms from either the stakeholder or shareholder perspective are about creating value. But I think that the wider net that's cast with the stakeholder perspective is really interesting, because the firms that are going to be able to continue are the ones that are able to create the most value. And the stakeholder perspective is one that has a much broader view of the value that's there. And so there's a lot of exciting ways that impact is being thought about, and about value creation generally. And it's just really, really exciting to see a lot of that permeating through so many spheres.
Awesome. Yeah, lots of conversations in our classes about shareholders versus stakeholders. So, and I love that that's come up in our classes. Looking at our core curriculum coming in, I was a little hesitant not seeing kind of impact explicitly written in our core curriculum, but after going through the core curriculum process, now know that those conversations have come up in almost every single one of our classes, and is definitely an important conversation to be having. So going back to kind of the recruiting side of things, one prospective student has asked, as MBA candidates, how do you view the role of business, nonprofits, and government for social and environmental impact? And I think probably what a lot of people want to know is, can MBAs work for nonprofits, or do they only succeed in social enterprises? Or just kind of building on that, where do you see the most demand for MBAs when it comes to impact right now?
Yes, obligatory alum can jump in on this one first. I would say I have classmates who came from the running joke in the MBA program, right, is it's musical chairs. Everybody is switching careers. So people who came working in for-profit are going to nonprofit and vice versa. I know a few folks who did go back into nonprofits, had a lot of success there. I know some of the women I work with have, leapfrogged back and forth between the for-profit and nonprofit space with the MBA skill set. So I would say that depends on you. I think a reason you might see a lot of your classmates who care about impact go first into the for-profit space is for financial reasons of paying off that student debt, if we're all being honest. But the skill set, I think, is really broadly applicable, especially if you are throughout your experience being deliberate about incorporating impact and building those skills and, being able to apply that. And even if you go for profit, there's so many opportunities to serve on boards, as there are many nonprofits that now have like young adult boards that are perfect for a post MBA. So it doesn't have to be your full-time job. And I think that's a theme that's everybody at Impact at Anderson, echoes, is impact anywhere.
We actually got a question specifically about that, Justin. This is tailored towards you as an Mba, but mainly you just touched on this as well. Is philanthropy and social impact something that should be deferred as we get older, or can we manage a career and impact early on?
I mean, look, I don't think anything should have to be deferred. I think, and that goes back to the beauty of what you said, Carol, earlier about this whole notion about starting a startup these days has to have a social component to it. I remember when Blake, who was a friend of a friend, he started Tom's Shoes, and he was like, I'm going to take this shoe that I found and I'm going to sell it at Nordstrom's. And I was like, good luck with that, buddy. And obviously he proved me wrong. And now I go to him when I do fundraisers for school events. And I'm like, can we get a basket of Tom's Shoes so I can raise money for my kid's school? No, I don't think anything should be deferred. I think, again, it goes back to, what do you want to do? If you want to make an impact, find the best and biggest and most fulfilling way to make that impact, and start it early, start it on and grow it and create it. And if you find that you need to go into the for-profit model to pay bills so that you can make a bigger impact later, then don't kick yourself for doing that. Go do that. Make a change in where you are currently, and know bigger later on that you will do something that'll be a little bit closer to home. And if you have the ability to start now, start now.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's come up throughout this panel. So echo that. There's a lot of ways to start now, whether it's in addition to the role that you're pursuing or part of the role you're pursuing. Hopefully, Impact at Anderson, AVIP, and other opportunities in your business school experience can help you define what that looks like for you. Cool. So we are at the end of our panel. If anyone has any closing remarks, then please feel free to jump in. But otherwise, thank you all so much for your time. And thank you all, everyone who has joined us today. We hope that this has been helpful for you to get the most out of your time here at Anderson, or hopefully helped you think about how you might want to apply for business school or apply your existing experience towards this intersection of purpose and profit. Thank you, everybody.